Hi guys, this is Alicia with Good Morning Sunshine. So today is Thursday, week 4, day 19. Only had 2 lectures today and then a lab. We had like 3 hours between lecture and lab though, but I got a lot of stuff done. I got my integrative stuff for tomorrow done, and then my CAT-Me assignment done, so that was good. Started putting things in order to start studying for exams. We have a mock trial lab exam on Saturday morning, so that's going to be very helpful for our lab exam on Monday. But yeah, so we went over topography, topography, is not how you say it, of the pelvic cavity, and then we also did the GI tract today. And we had my favorite professor today, Dr. Bonnie. She's amazing. Love her. Main reason why I came today. Yeah. But anyways, so I'm going to start with the topography of the pelvic cavity. So some of our objectives were to identify the clinical importance of the pelvic cavity, to identify the boundaries of the pelvic cavity, the inlet and outlet, to understand the topographical relations of the systems within the pelvic cavity, and to understand the various anatomical structures within the pelvic cavity, and then to list the various organs or structures accessible by rectal palpation in small and large animals, male and female. I'm pretty sure we have this lab next week, and this is where we put our hands up in cows' rectum area, so that's gonna be fun. And then lastly, our last objective is to correlate the topography to some clinical cases. So we started with the bones of the pony pelvis. So we started with body cavities. So it includes the thoracic cavity, the abdominal cavity, the pelvic cavity, and the pelvic cavity, which is the largest cavity in the body. The pelvic cavity is continuous with the abdomen, and it has a tubular passage. And then we got into the bony pelvis, which is a bony ring formed around the pelvic cavity. This ring is formed by the pelvic girdle, the sacrum, and the first and second caudal vertebrae. So again, here's what that would look like. We have the first and second vertebrae, which are, so one, we have the sacrum. Remember, 3 fused here, and then the 3 fused vertebrae, remember? And then the 2, number 2 is the first caudal vertebrae. So that's this right here. And 3 is the sacrotuberous ligament. He said it was up here, but it says 3's down here, but he said it was this one up here. And then we have the ischial tuberosity, which is 4, which is down here. So that is the bony pelvis. Then we got into the boundaries of the pelvic outlet. Outlet and inlet are different. So the outlet is the first caudal vertebrae. It has the sacrotuberous ligaments, which are in the dog only, and muscles. And then it has the ischial arch. So let me show you here. So it looks like the sacrotuberous ligament was that long one, not the top one. So we have this. Here's the ischial arch. Because remember, the ischium's down here. We have the ilium, ischium, pelvic, which is the top, ischium being the bottom part. And then the blue here, that's the sacrotuberous ligaments. And then we got into the boundaries of the pelvic inlet. It's the bony ring, like I said, circle surrounding the entrance, and then it has a terminal line. It includes the sacrum, the promontory of the sacrum, and I'll show you that in a minute, and the shaft of the ilium, and the pubis. It has a transverse diameter, which is the greatest distance between the arcuate lines of the ilium. And then it has a conjugate diameter, which is the distance between the sacral promontory and the pecten pubis. So here's what I'm talking about down here. So again, here's the promontory right here. And then we have the pubis. And then of course the shaft of the ileum. So this all creates the pelvic inlet. This, I circled it in light blue down there. And then we got into the context of the pelvic cavity and canal. So we have terminal parts of 3 systems. So we have the digestive tract, the reproductive, male and female, and then we have the lower urinary tract. So then I'm going to show you a picture that includes the urethra, the vagina, the vestibular of the vagina, and the urethral orifice. So number 1 is the urethra right there. Number 2 is the vagina right here. And then we have the vestibule of the vagina, which is number 3. And then we have the urethral orifice, which is 4. So then we got into the pelvic and urogenital diagrams, or diaphragms, sorry, not diagrams, but I'm gonna show you diagrams. The perineum is the wall and associated structures closing the pelvic outlet and surrounding the anal and urogenital canals. So then the perineum is broken into 2 regions. You have the anal region dorsally, and then you have the urogenital region ventrally. But anyways, a little weird, but this is what we're doing. So from the rectum through the scrotum is the perineal region. So then again, I told you then it was broken into 2 regions, which is the next picture over. So the lighter green is the anal region, and then the urogenital region is the darker triangle right here. And then various muscles and fascia close the pelvic outlet. So it's mainly muscles. It's usually the coccygeus muscle and the levator muscle, the levator ani muscle that close the pelvic outlet. And these also, the pelvic diaphragm anchors the rectum. The urogenital diaphragm is mainly closed by fascia, and it anchors the reproductive tract. So then we got into topographical relations of the body systems in the pelvis. The most dorsal region is the GI system. The middle region is the reproductive system, and the most ventral is the urinary system. So contexts of the pelvic cavity include the rectum and anal canal. The junction of the descending colon and the rectum has no demarcation except the level of the pelvic inlet, where the descending colon shifts from the left side to the midline to become straight, which that is the rectum. The line is the terminal line, and it is start of the rectum. So it was just talking about when the descending colon becomes the rectum. So it's when it becomes straight, basically, the descending colons become straight. That's when it turns into the rectum. And then we got into the urinary and pelvis. The urinary bladder position, it lies directly on the pelvic floor. If it is empty, it is a thick wall. It feels solid. It lies almost with the pelvic cavity. But if the bladder is full, it is a thin wall, and it may rupture if blocked. It extends cranially into the abdomen. So if I can show you a picture of the bladder, if you can see that arrow right there, the bladder's right there. The urinary bladder has 3 parts. It has the apex, the body, and the neck. I am going to show you a diagram that includes the ureter, the urachus, the apex, the body, the neck, and the ureteral orifice and the urethra. So here's this diagram right here. So number 1 is the light blue here. That is your ureters. Number 2 is urachus, which is over here in the corner. And then 3 is your, of course, apex at the end. 4 being the body. 5 being the neck here. 6 being the ureter orifice, which is right here off the ureters. And then you have the urethra, which is 7 here. So then we got into the urinary bladder. It is a smooth triangular region. It's on the dorsal internal wall of the bladder neck. Its boundaries, it has the 2 openings of ureters and the internal urethral orifice. So then we got into urinary bladder relations for male and female. Ventrally is the pubis on both male and females. Dorsally, the reproductive organs and their supporting folds is the same in male and female, but which differentiates them. In the male, you have a ductus deferens and vesicular glands within the urogenital fold, but in the female, you have the cervix and vagina within the broad ligaments. It is difficult to rectal palpate in females. The urinary bladder is hard to palpate in females. Sorry, I didn't finish that thought. And then the position. In males, it is entirely inside the pelvis on its floor, whereas in females, the apex may reach the umbilicus on the abdominal floor. And then we got into the urinary bladder, peritoneal fixation. These are the mesenteries of the bladder. So you have 2 lateral ligaments, right and left. The attachment being the lateral wall of the urinary bladder and the lateral wall of the pelvis. Its supported structures are the umbilical arteries to the round ligaments of the urinary bladder. And then you have the medium ligament, which is attached between the ventral surface of the urinary bladder and the pelvic floor. And its supported structures are the urachus, which leave a scar on the bladder apex after birth. So again, you have 2 lateral ligaments and 1 medial. So then we got into the arrangement of the peritoneum in females. I'm going to show you a diagram, but let me show you here. So here's this diagram. 1 being the peritoneum, which is the the blue lining. And then we have the rectum, which is 2, which is right here. There's your rectum. 3, we have the mesorectum, which is right here. And then 4, we have the pararectal fossa, which is surrounding the rectum. Then 5, we have the rectogenital pouch down here. 6, we have the bladder itself, which is right here, which is underneath the rectum. And then 7, we have the medium vesicle ligament, which is right here, black around. And then we have 8, which is the lateral vesicle ligament, which is up here. And then 9, we have the pubovesical pouch, which is right there and right there. And then 10, we have the vesicogenital right here, which is above the urinary bladder. And then 11, we have the vagina, which is right here. And then 12, we have broad ligament of the uterus, which is right here. And then 13, we have the ureter. So these are the ureters on both sides. You have 12 and 13. So you have a broad ligament of the uterus and the ureter coming from the vagina. Then we talked about the urachus in fetus. The patent urachus is closed after being born. If it doesn't close, there would be stuff leaking out of the umbilicus. So urine will start leaking, and then you know that something that it didn't close. And then we got into the terminal parts of the ureters. We have the, I'm going to show you another picture, sorry. So number 1, we have the urinary bladder, of course. Number 2 and 3, we have the right and left kidneys. So 2 and 3. And then 4, we have the ureters, again coming off the urinary bladder, right here. And then 5, we have the rectum, right here. 6, we have the vagina, right there. 7, we have the external opening of the urethra, which is right there. So then we got into the entrance of ureters into the bladder, the intramural part of the ureter. I can just show you here. So we have the ureter here leading into the urinary bladder, and then we have the neck of the bladder, and then this is the entrance of the ureter into the bladder when it's open. So then we talked about the urethra, the pelvic urethra in a male first. It extends from the bladder to the pelvic outlet. Its widest diameter of entire urethral length. The urethralis muscle is a thick layer of skeletal muscle. It is external urethral sphincter. And then I will show you a diagram here. So this is male again, 2 being the bladder, 4 being the prostate or the prostatic urethra, 5 being the prostatic urethra, and then 10 being the penile urethra right here. And then we got into the pelvic urethra in females, which is a little bit different. So here you have the urinary bladder, we have the apex of it, the neck, and here's the rectum above it up there. Then we have the ureter again leading into the bladder. We have the uterus, and then the vagina and the vestibule. So in the male reproductive tract in the pelvis, we have the ductus deferens, which is a continuation of the duct of the epididymis. It terminates in the pelvic urethra as white. It's a wire-like threads divergent from the neck of the bladder. As gentle traction will bring the retained testicles into view for the abdomen or inguinal canal. So the ductus deferens is this right here in light blue. So then we got into the ductus vas deferens, which I'm going to show you another picture here. Sorry, lots of pictures to go over. So here's this, if you can see it well. So 1, we have the shaft of the ilium over here. 2, we have the sciatic nerve next to it. 3, we have the pudendal nerve, which is right here. 4, we have the anus, of course, over here. 5, we have the left testes in the scrotum down here. And then we have 5 prime, which is the spermatic cord, which is right here, leading from the testes in the scrotum. And 6, we have the penis itself. 6 prime, we have the prepuce, which again, right there. Then we have the bulbourethral gland, which is 7 up here above the penis and prepuce. 8, we have the prostate right there. And then 9, we have the deferent duct, which is what we're talking about right now. And then 9 prime, we have the testicular vessels, which is right there. And then 10, of course, we have the bladder. And then 11, we have the left ureter. Then we got into the male reproductive tract in the pelvis, the accessory genital glands. The accessory genital glands varies with species, but there's a prostate gland in all species. The prostate gland surrounds the neck of the bladder, the pelvis symphysis ventrally, and the rectum dorsally. So I can show you where the prostate gland lies, which is this, where the arrow is pointing to. And then I'm going to show you the prostate in cats. They have a bug gland, which other species do not have. But I think this was the same picture I may have shown you. Yeah. Because 7, I show you the bulbourethral gland. 8 is the prostate. 9 is the deferent duct. Again, 10 is the bladder, and 11 is the left ureter. So that's just the same diagram, just, yeah. So then we were doing the comparison of the prostatic urethra in a dog and cat. So I'll show you a dog prostate versus a cat prostate and what they look like. So here we have dog, and then cat prostate we have there. In a dog, the prostate completely surrounds the urethra. In the tomcat, however, it's bilobed. It covers the pelvic urethra dorsally and laterally only. It has striated muscle from the prostatic urethra overlaps the feline urethra ventrally. And then we got into prostate disease, which is the constipation and dysuria, which is painful urination. It has digital palpation per rectum, so it goes, we would do castration, no testosterone, and decreased size of the gland. So here's a normal prostate. I don't know if you can see that well, but the top one's the normal prostate, and then this one is the prostate disease. And then we got into the female reproductive in the pelvis. So you have the uterine cervix, which is thick, and then you have the vagina, which terminates at the entrance of the urethra. And then to show you the location of the uterus and ovaries, here we are. If non-pregnant, it is this red one in orange, but if you are pregnant, it's this pink and yellow one. And it's on the belly floor right here. And then again, we got into rectal palpations. The clinical importance of rectal palpation is mainly for the reproductive tract. It's mainly in large animals, and for dogs, it's to check their prostate gland. It is usually part of the physical exam. You can do pregnancy detection and staging. You can do breeding soundness exams. You can do therapy diagnosis by transrectal ultrasound. And then we talked about the rectal palpation in large animals. You can feel if a cow is pregnant. Bovines usually. You can palpate the cecum, the small intestine, the colon, the kidney, the reproductive tract, the rumen, and the spleen, and equine only though for the spleen. So here it shows someone palpating the left kidney, the spleen, the jejunum, and the pelvic flexure. So then we got lastly into the examination of the digestive system by rectal palpation in equine. So you can palpate a lot of things here. So this is the palpation of the spleen right here. Then you do the palpation of the aorta. You can do the palpation of the small intestine. Down here you can do the palpation of the pelvic flexure, and then lastly the cecal palpation. So you're going to do a lot of things with that. So that was it for that lecture. I know, 23 minutes long seems like a long time, huh? But then Dr. Bonnie's lecture. Love her. So then we were learning about the GI tract and the alimentary system, or the alimentary tract. So there is a difference between the alimentary tract and the GI tract. People usually pair them together, but there are differences. So the alimentary is the whole thing from mouth to anus, whereas the gastrointestinal tract is from the stomach through the intestines. So then she talked about stomachs. There's different kinds of stomachs. There's the simple stomach, which include the pig, dog, and horse. But there's also complex stomachs, which include ruminants like bovine, because they have to ferment cellulose in the stomach as well. So here's different kinds of stomachs. Here's a pig one. Here's a dog. Here's a horse. All domestic animals and all simple stomachs. Then we have this one. This is the bovine stomach. So then we got into the primary alimentary tract functions. we have ingestion and mastication, which is for eating and chewing and ingesting. It's a mechanical oral function. Contributions from other systems are also necessary though, so things like tactile, vision, olfactory, and memory cues. They are not part of the alimentary system, but they work with it. The cow's primary organ of ingestion is their tongue. But the two distinct processes are digestion and absorption. Digestion clearly meaning, so remember they're distinct processes, they're not the same. So digestion has to do with just reduction in size. So taking food in and making that food into small enough pieces to get absorbed into the blood. So example, she said a dog eating grass, he will bite it and make it into smaller pieces. Yes. Will he digest it? Yes. Will he absorb it? No. So that was her example of digestion. How digestion and absorption not the same thing. So digestion, it reduces foodstuffs to molecules small enough to be absorbed. Like I said, it requires physical, chemical, and or enzymatic breakdown. So you have different kinds of digestion. You have mechanical digestion, which is the simple reduction in size caused by mechanical action alone. This includes oral, which is chewing, and then gastric, which is grinding. This meaning when that food gets into the stomach, it's not fully chewed up in our mouths. Usually we end up swallowing something, and then in the stomach it'll grind together in order to make that into smaller pieces as well. And then we have chemical digestion, which is the hydrolysis of chemical bonds done by action of the gastric acid, HCl, which is hydrochloric acid. It takes the quaternary structure, if you remember that's one of the big structures, and it breaks it down into a single or multiple long strands. So it basically denatures proteins and gets rid of their folding structure from the quaternary structure. And then we have enzymatic digestion, which is the hydrolysis of chemical bonds accomplished by enzymes produced by various regions of the alimentary tract or by hosted microbes. The jejunum is the primary site for digestion. You need microbial fermentation to break down cellulose. So then we're going to get into absorption, which is nutrients and numerous other substances as well. And then fat itself has to go to the lymphatic system. That was just a quick note. But for absorption, it's the transport of nutrient particles into the vascular system. It can only follow adequate digestion, so size reduction. So digestion has to come first in order for things to be absorbed. But again, they're two separate processes governed by different controls. So, for example, though maldigestive and malabsorptive diseases may share clinical signs, both may present as skinny, but they are clinically distinct and must be both distinguished from each other and treated differently. So then we got into elimination, which is the production, temporary storage, and expulsion of fecal mass in the descending colon. So she made a joke. Look, it's poop. That's poop. That is poop. This animal really needs to poop. But if that gets blocked, that's a huge concern. So you probably heard of a blocked tom. Yes, that's it. So then we got also into detoxification. Liver, it is necessary, very necessary. The liver saves us. It detoxifies many substances. And then bacterial housing and management. Species must upkeep all the time. So we need to keep the bacteria out of blood. The liver and alimentary tract are mainly responsible for this. They need to keep bacteria numbers correct, and colonic bacteria out of the small intestine. So you can have bacteria in the colon, like you have E. coli, she said, you have salmonella, all okay in the colon, but it cannot reach the small intestine. Herbivores, hosting fermentating bacteria is essential. So then we got into immune function, which is T cells and D cells. They help proliferates the gut. Secretion, we have mucus, HCl, HCO3. We have enzymes, electrolytes, water, and hormones. And then endocrine function is a surprisingly large role. The hormones are made by the GI tract, and they have both local and systematic influences. Then we got into diet-related anatomic variation. The body as a whole all comes back to what they eat. So how animals are built, like a giraffe has a long neck because of what it eats. It eats up high, it eats leaves. So all animals come back to what they eat. So moles underground because they eat worms, have small eyes. Like all these features of an animal is because of what they eat. A lot of it. And then we got into the entire head anatomy, such as salivary glands and herbivores are huge. So depending on what they eat, makes up for their head anatomy. And then the gastrointestinal tract, we have the stomach and large intestine. And then we got into the phases of assimilation of foodstuffs. Digestion has 3 phases. Absorption only has 1 single phase. So the luminal phase of digestion is free in the lumen of the GI tract. So again, it starts with the stomach and ends at the guts. Lumen is the open space in the middle here of this picture. So one, varying with the region of the alimentary tract in question includes both physical and or chemical enzymatic digestion. Again, it takes place from the mouth through at least the small intestine. This is enzymatic digestion. Luminal enzymatic digestion involves enzymes produced by the organ itself, like the stomach and small intestine, and or the major glands of the GI tract, the salivary glands or the pancreas, and or in herbivores is hosted by microbial population in the ruminant stomach, and herbivores cecum and ascending colon. Again, varying with the region of the GI tract in question, luminal digestion produces in all vertebrates short-chain polymers that are still too big to absorb, and in ruminants and equine, symbiotic microbes produce some products of the absorbable size. So that's basically where she stopped today for that. I only had 2 lectures today, like I said. I had lab, which was basically a physical thoracic exam. I already knew this from work, so the lab wasn't too hard. We did it on a dog. We checked their lungs. We checked their heart in many different places. So you have on the right, you have the tricuspid valve, but then on the left, you have 3 places to check. You have the pulmonary, and then you have the aortic valves, and then lastly, you have the AV valve, the mitral. So you have to know what sections to listen to with your stethoscope. And then you want to make sure the heart rate matches the pulse. But yeah, you check all their lymph nodes. So yeah, we did all that today. So it was pretty easy lab today because I knew all that from work. So that was beneficial. But yeah. I posted pictures of deer videos on my Facebook as well. So if you want to go look at those. I actually did my colored eyebrows today because tomorrow we have mentor day, which includes they pair us with a doctor who share like interests that we do. So I'm a companion animal, and I kind of want to focus in pathology one day and necropsy, so she also got into that. So I'll get to meet my doctor tomorrow, which will be beneficial for work and stuff thereafter becoming a veterinarian, and maybe she can teach me lots of things. But that should be fun. We also have an integrated session, which I talked about that I already did their stuff. We're learning about heart murmurs and that, so of a Great Dane. But yeah, I hope you guys had a good day today. I'll probably have another long day tomorrow, and then cramming for the 2 exams on Monday. I also have an appointment in between those exams, which is, the exams are already stressful enough, and now you're gonna throw me, I have to drive all the way to Roanoke, which is 30 minutes away for an appointment, and drive all the way back in between my exams. So stressing a little bit, but yeah. I think that was it for today. But thank you guys for watching. I know sometimes it's boring, but other times it can be really interesting. So yeah, thanks guys.